listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Welcome along, everyone, to my podcast, Straight to Video. As always, it's me, Rob Lane, bringing you chats with musicians, actors, and all-around creative people, and learning a little about their journey. And today I speak to the songwriter of one of the 1980s biggest hit singles, which was then followed up with another smash hit in the following decade. Kimberley Rew was the guitarist and songwriter for the band Katrina The Waves, bringing to life that hit single, Walking on Sunshine, which is still as fun and catchy to this day. And whilst that song commanded the airwaves in the 80s, Kimberley's songwriting once again struck gold in 1997 when his song Love Shine a Light was chosen as the UK's entry to the Eurovision Song Contest, which came away the clear winner and in fact the last time the UK sealed a victory at the event. Unbelievably, that is now a quarter of a century ago, which is hard to believe. Kimberley's journey, though, has much more to share than just his time at the top of the charts with Katrina The Waves, and it's one I enjoyed learning about, as it's often easy to overlook the history to a lot of these bands and musicians. Prior to The Waves, Kimberley was part of the band The Soft Boys, a band whose name regularly gets mentioned by the likes of R.E.M. and the Flaming Lips as being a big influence on them, whilst perhaps not that well known in the mainstream. And it's a band that was only just brought up a couple of weeks ago on this show by guitarist Ryan Smith of Soul Asylum, who even has a Soft Boys cover version in the works. We discuss all of this as we check in with Kimberley, who is joined by his wife and bandmate Lee Cave Berry, who shares some great stories which I look forward to you hearing. Before we get to the chat, please check in with our friends Dead Skull Coffee to grab some of the finest rock and roll coffee here in the UK. If you place an order through their website, deadskullcoffee.co.uk, and add the discount code STV on checkout, you will get a huge 15% off your order simply for being a listener to this show. Okay, you can keep up to date with everything Kimberley is doing, from releasing new music to live shows with his wife Lee, through their websites kimberleyrew.co.uk and also at kimandlee.co.uk. But right now, please enjoy my straight to video chat with guitarist and songwriter Kimberley Rew.
Like the sun travels on its journey across the sky. You can't rely on me. And if he gets to where he's going, tell me why can't I? You can't rely on me. You can't rely on me. You can't rely on me.
Hello, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
I've got you, sir. I've got you.
I'm here as well.
Terrific.
Yeah, in the background.
Right.
Keep him on track.
Yes, that's right. And providing the occasional giggle in the background, that's my job.
That's fine. It's all good. How are you both? You all right?
Yeah, great. Thank
Very
you.
well, thank you.
Kimberley, you're originally from Bristol, I believe, and began an interest in music by listening to Alan Freeman's Pick of the Pops in the early 60s.
I think everybody did, yeah. It was like the only BBC pop music radio show. I think originally it was just like the BBC, wasn't it? And then you had the Light programme, and what was the BBC became called the Home Service, presumably to distinguish it from, BBC programmes going out to like the British Empire around the world. Then you also had the third programme, but that was called the very serious end of music. And Alan Freeman's Pick of the Pops was on the Light programme, and it was the only pop music show, what we would think of as the rock and roll era. What we used to think of, the rest of it was all what we used to think of as mums and dance music. There was this big generation gap at the time.
Yeah, what music had been on your radar prior to then? Did your parents listen to anything in particular, do you remember?
Well, I remember there were things like Magic Moments by Perry Como. I mean, for some reason, that got into my consciousness. What Do You Want to Make Those Eyes at Me For by Emil Ford and the Checkmates. I remember that from first time around. Almost rock and roll, but maybe more the kind of poppy novelty end of rock and roll that actually got played.
What was the kind of music you heard on the radio that really sparked your love? Was it the Beatles or was it music prior to that?
Well, this was 1962, so I was so lucky because I came right in on the ground floor with the Beatles. Suddenly there was the same Love Me Do by the Beatles. And I thought, you can't have a band called the Beatles, that's daft. They've got to be called something like the Jets or the Avengers or the Comets, or, well, there was Bill Haley and his Comets, of course. Something kind of groovy and sort of masculine. I mean, like these young chaps had to be sort of, very obviously male. And obviously the Beatles were very obviously male, but in a sort of different almost, they were a kind of different kind of male.
Do you remember the impact they had when they came along? Was it massive for you and your friends? Was it like before and after the Beatles?
I think it was like that for, if you're old enough to remember Elvis appearing on the scene in 1956, I think it was like that. I think all the clocks were reset to zero.
That's a good way of putting it, I think, just everything suddenly becomes reset.
Yeah, and then maybe the same again with the Beatles. They had Love Me Do, then Please Please Me, and From Me to You. Then suddenly it was like the Beatles. I mean, they were like the only thing that matters, and that was like the future of everything. And then actually later on, when you had punk and new wave, they tried to reset the clock again, and you had this whole generation that were actually younger than me, saying, sorry, we've now reset the clock. So, I don't know who you are. I mean, you're not even talking to me. I don't think there's anybody talking to me. I mean, if the clocks have been reset, you don't know they've been reset. Almost like you've got to deny it, pretend that nothing actually happened at all before that 0 points. But that didn't quite work so well. I mean, I think we've kind of crept back now and said, all right, there's a classic era, like the rock and roll explosion, and then like the classic albums era for late 60s and early 70s. There hasn't been another classic albums era since then.
Did you become like a collector of records? Did you go out buying 45s and all that kind of thing?
I wish I had, but I didn't have any money. I only had my pocket money. So we had to make do with Alan Freeman. And so there was also Radio Luxembourg. My brother and I, in our bedroom, had one of those big old radios. I mean, it was the size and shape of what would now be a washing machine, except it was in a varnished wooden cabinet with a sort of basketwork grill on the front over the speaker. And, you could tune into... was it 208? I mean, they were a pirate station, really before they were called pirate stations, and they were playing all these pop records. And probably not, things like the Performing Rights Society that we're not collecting from Radio Luxembourg, so they were definitely pirates.
And like you say that you didn't have the money to buy records, but also didn't have the money to buy a guitar. Was you given a guitar in 1964?
I was given a guitar, yeah. It was like by an amazing sequence of events. The family moved home. My father was actually chatting to the seller, and he said, oh, my son's got a guitar, but he never plays it. Like, I'll leave it for you in the house, when you move in. And I can remember, walking into this completely empty house, except for in one room, a guitar leaning up against the wall, and that became my guitar. And actually, I realised much later on when I learned to play that it was an absolute dog. It was a piece of junk.
That's everybody's first guitar, though, right? That's the best way to start.
At least, it was a guitar. And I did make an honest attempt at learning to play it. I mean, it's possibly this guy might have forgotten, there would have been no guitar there.
You didn't have to fight over it with your brother, did you?
No, he went down the classical music road. He's always been a singer. They're also a husband and wife team, my brother and my sister-in-law. They both sing. She plays the piano beautifully. We've both been very lucky. We've had that in our lives and marriages.
Have you ever done any gigs together?
I don't know what they would sound like. That would be very strange.
We've got a full band, though. You got a bass player in your wife. You just need a drummer.
Yeah, exactly. If he was a drummer, we'd have a full four-piece.
Are you self-taught on guitar?
Well, again, I'm very lucky because both my parents had a sister who was 13 years younger than themselves. So they were actually right between the generations. So that means my father's younger sister's husband was actually a genuine original rock and roller from the 1950s, and he could play the guitar. And there weren't that many of them about in 1964. Surprisingly, it seems like a golden age, but they were a relatively small group of people. It wasn't like you could learn the guitar at school. It wasn't like there were guitars, in charity shops and things like, well, very few. So anyway, this uncle very kindly bought me a Bert Weedon Play in a Day book. And we had a week of that. And then I was on my own.
Have you always been a songwriter? Was that something right from the very beginning?
Well, quite early on, I realised that there were actually kids around that could play the guitar, but there weren't that many kids around that could play the guitar and write songs. Obviously, what we all wanted to do then was copy our heroes. But I think I realised that let's, be different. I mean, let's write something.
You could impress the girls.
I thought it would impress the girls. Yeah,
it did.
I had that image in my head. it's not quite that simple. I thought like I would learn to play the guitar and then everything else would happen automatically. I would be a star, I would be a hero, I'd be up on the big stage. I could get as much attention from girls as I wanted.
That's the dream.
I think I'm thought of by my contemporaries at school as the guy that could play the guitar. When there were two of us in the form, me and my friend Cole Michaels.
We were still in contact with Cole. You had a bit of time when you didn't really have much contact, did you? But over that 40-year period, he carried on playing songs that Kimberley had written at school. Went to see a gig with Cole in it, and they finished with one of Kim's songs that you wrote at school.
Yeah.
So.
You would arrive in Cambridge to study at college in 1971, I believe, and even gained a degree in archaeology.
That's right, yeah.
Was that something you saw as a career? Did you have any thoughts of trying music to earn a living?
Well, I kind of drifted into the archaeology. I mean, I was still kind of struggling away with the guitar and the music, student bands and that. But I kind of met these very like-minded archaeologists, that's the great thing about, going away to university and kind of meeting people.
Just broadening your horizons.
Yeah, maybe that doesn't happen quite so much now. Kids will commute at university from their parents' houses. I met these wonderful people. I switched to archaeology. If you go to West Stowe, near Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk, there's a partially reconstructed Anglo-Saxon village there. I helped start that in 1973. Ultimately, I found the world of archaeology actually to be too competitive.
More than music.
Yeah, I went back to the music. I got together with Alex Cooper of Katrina The Waves fame, and I took it from there.
You was called The Waves with the band you formed with Alex Cooper. How was those initial first steps?
We never really did anything,
Apart from me.
Meeting you.
Yeah, we had a gig together. I was in a band called Blotto. They had a gig at the Alexford Hall in Cambridge, and it was a 3-band. And Blotto was the first band. Kimberley was in the Waves, which is the second band. And then Robin was in the third band, which was the Soft Boys, which Kimberley hadn't joined yet. So that was 1977. That's when we very first met. But we were both going out with other people. So he went into the friend box for 20 years.
That's quite a lineup of preempting things if the Soft Boys was on that bill as well.
Yeah,
that was the local music scene in Cambridge in 1977. That's who you would have seen. I've got a flyer for a Soft Boys gig somewhere, and it's something like 1979, Liverpool Eric's, Eric's Club in Liverpool. And it says, Thursday night, the Soft Boys, £1. The following Monday night, it's something like, free admission, the teardrop explodes, orchestral manoeuvres in the dark, humanly. It's like all those bands, who at the time were completely unknown. That was the same week.
Yeah, I love seeing that. It's like when you find a poster for an old festival which you went to 10 years prior, and you see all these bands which you'd never heard of at the time, and now they're massive bands.
Yeah, they're a bit completely beyond your reach. To actually go and see them live would involve opening in ear overdrafts and so.
Definitely. We're mentioning the band The Soft Boys. This was the band who you would go on to join with Robin Hitchcock. The Soft Boys are a band who originally weren't deemed commercially successful, but over time have amassed an incredible amount of respect from the likes of REM, Flaming Lips and The Replacements, citing them as influences. Obviously, these are American acts, and I think I read that half of the sales of the album Underwater Moonlight in the UK were actually exports. Do you have any knowledge of how it was getting that kind of traction over there, and was it in a particular area?
This was an album by an obscure band on a small label. They did have, what would you call it, licensing deals with the States. There was a certain amount of critical interest over there with lesser-known bands over here. There possibly would have been specialist record shops over there where you could buy the Underwater Moonlight album.
Yeah, imports. Didn't the members of REM say when we actually met them that they'd found it in a remainder bin?
Well, possibly. This could have been an album that had been in the shop for 6 months, and they'd been reduced in price. And it would have been attractive to impecunious students. Yeah, I think REM were originally a student band.
Yeah, they were.
Maybe University of... What's in Athens, Georgia, which is a college town.
I wonder if like one of those small college stations picked it up and some DJ was playing it at like 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, that could well have got some play
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that kind of show.
When did you guys meet REM then?
REM, well, we know Peter Buck reasonably well. Quite often when Robin would do a gig, Peter Buck would come along and accompany Robin. I would very occasionally get asked to join in. So, you know, we used to chat to Peter, Scott McCoy, Ken Stringfellow, and Bill Rooflin on the drums.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Interestingly, I had guitarist Ryan Smith from the band Soul Asylum on this show a couple of weeks ago, and he's working on some solo material at the moment, and one of the songs he has coming out is a cover of I Wanna Destroy You.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll look out for that. I will put my hand up. I don't really know what's happened like in the last 40 years in the music world.
But no, I'm sure he'll do an amazing version of that, so I'll have to get a copy of it sent over to you for you to check it out.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, we love
thanks.
that. Yeah. We're seeing Robin on Thursday, aren't we?
Yeah, we're doing one of our
guest spots.
The Soft Boys did take you to the USA, though, in New York, I believe. How was the response to the band over there?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, New York, you know, like London, New York. I mean, I think if an American band comes over to London, you know, and they play like a week's worth of shows, they get a certain, you know, people are willing to give them the time of day. You know, the critics will give them a certain amount of credit and attention. We did get that, in New York in 1980.
I was New York in 1980, though, because that's a pretty gritty time. Did you do like Danceteria and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, we played at the Danceteria, the Mud Club, Maxwell's Hoboken. That's, you know, just outside New York. But yeah, as you say, it's funny, you couldn't actually go out of the hotel after dark. You know, you had to like order a taxi, you know, and then go to wherever you're going and then order another one to go back. And things like the Power Station recording studio in New York. I don't think you can actually go out of the building at all, ever, like unless there was a taxi waiting for you. It was strange that they'd allowed the city to get into that state, really. But there you go. I think with very late 70s, 1980, you're sort of just within the classic periods. You know, you have the sort of big classic albums era and then a sort of a little flurry just a bit later on with the kind of new wave.
All very exciting around that time.
We just squeezed into it, yeah.
The Soft Boys would disband and you'd reunite with your drummer Alex Cooper, who'd gone on to be in the band Mama's Cooking, I believe was the name, which were doing cover songs, and featured vocalist Katrina Carnage. You would join the band and it would resume the name The Waves. How was that transition from cover band to originals? Was it you coming in with a bunch of original material, or was that an agreement, like, if I'm coming in, I'm bringing my songs?
Yeah, I mean, it was like that, yes. I mean, they weren't writing at the time. I mean, they did later on. I mean, I came in with some original songs. I did some singing, but it became very clear very quickly Katrina was an outstanding singer. And then my writing became sort of more appropriate to her and that audience could connect to. You know, and that's how we kind of got that musical direction. At the same time, we revived the name The Waves. But, you know, then we put the Katrina on the front, and then that immediately gave it a lot more of an identity. You know, like when it came to people's notice, you know, they could really remember who it was.
Was it through connections with the Soft Boys that the band would get some albums released in Canada?
Yes, another tiny label, Attic Records in Toronto, picked up on the Soft Boys Underwater Moonlight album. And in the very early days of Katrina The Waves, you know, we had a self-produced album. Attic Records in Canada picked up on that same album as well. You know, it's the same people at Attic. You know, they were still there. Ralph Alfonso, a name that, you know, to which a lot of credit must be attached.
Was it the first full-length album actually titled Walking on Sunshine, featured the original version of the Future Hit song? I really like that version of the song. Obviously, very similar structure, but more raw, a little faster and straight ahead. You can really hear the magic already there.
Oh, great. Yeah. We did record it twice, yeah.
And it was produced more the second time, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the second time there were a few more hooks on there. Both of those were recorded and produced with Pat Collier. He was originally a member of the Vibrators. We met him back in the Soft Boys days. Since 1979, he has organised and built and run a series of recording studios all around London. I think he sort of rents buildings, builds studios in them, and then sort of leases them on to other people and builds another one and so on. Both the Soft Boys, Katrina The Waves and Kimberley, have done loads of recording with Pat. He's the same age as me, and he's still going strong. And he's become the go-to guy for punk. Apparently in like Bulgaria, punk is absolutely huge. And there are all these Bulgarian punk bands that are like beating a path to South London to be recorded by Pat Collier in his studio. Because Pat is like the real thing from the original time. I'm very glad that, he's got such a great reputation because he deserves it.
Was it the 1985 rework version that you worked with Scott Litt?
Well, another sort of happy accident. In late 1984, Katrina The Waves finally signed to a major record label, which was Capitol Records in the States. Not a British label, but Capitol was actually owned by EMI, which is a British major label. So EMI sort of got stuck with us.
By default.
Yeah, Capitol told us to remix this album, so which is why we then went to their local studio, which was the Power Station in New York. I'd never heard of the Power Station, but it was actually a very good studio of its time. I'd never heard of Scott Litt, but he was one of the genuine name producers of the time. He produced REM and so on. So, this was sort of handed to us on we didn't know what we were being given, actually, but that's what it was.
He cited that as being one of the greatest experiences of his production career, which isn't bad for a guy who has Nirvana and REM on his recording CV.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad he thinks highly of it, rather than a sort of disposable pop thing that came and went.
I think he said he could hear the magic of the song once you'd finished it.
Well, I'm glad, I think he could, yes, and there was some magic there. I think he made sure that was in the fronts.
Yes, he started it with the drums. He was the one who started it with the drums.
Well, he had the idea of editing on a few bars of just drums, from within the song.
Yeah, it's strange how people can just hear things, not differently, but, let's just try this. Let's just move this around a little bit.
You can drive yourself potty that way, though.
You can, yeah. Really, you've got to have quality stuff there to work with. You can't just sort of fart around, with 5 or 6 people sitting there. Well, unless you've got a huge amount of brass neck, just with an idea that's, you can't have the conviction to carry through. He had all of that.
Yeah.
And he did it.
The song's appeared in popular culture numerous times over the years. I know it from the Michael J. Fox movie Secret of My Success. Do you have a particular favourite appearance or most surprising use of the song?
Actually, there's a version on an advert for Fisher Price children's toys. And it is actually an original version. They recorded the whole thing. And it's a really good one. And I've never heard it anywhere else.
Oh, wow. I'll have to YouTube that.
I don't know who it's by, even.
Yeah.
Maybe just some anonymous session people or something.
Isn't there that amazing scene in...
Yeah, well remembered. There's a film called High Fidelity with John Cusack, based on the novel by Nick Hornby, another old Jesus College Cambridge man. Whether there's any connection, I don't know, but both work in this record shop. There's one scene where the Jack Black character actually puts on Walking on Sunshine, on the speakers. First thing in the morning or something. And then the other guy takes exception to it. And they have this huge argument about Walking on Sunshine by Katrina The Waves.
He's written another song recently that is going to be one of those songs that people who hate mornings will absolutely hate.
Oh, amazing. What's that one called? Can you let us know the title?
It's called Morning! Exclamation mark.
Does what it says on the tin.
Absolutely. And it's exuberant and cheerful and happy, and people who hate mornings will absolutely loathe it with a passion.
Brilliant. And you would have yet another massive smash hit some 10 years later with Love Shine a Light, which won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1997, 25 years ago this year, or in fact this weekend, I believe. Unreal to think that's a quarter century already.
I know. Time is like that. It's your life. it goes. You use it up. You get one chance.
25 years later, you understand timey-wimey comments by David Tennant. Where did it all go?
That came about, though, through the song being sent on a cassette tape to Terry Wogan's Breakfast Show on Radio 2, though. Could you ever imagine it not only being selected for Eurovision, but also winning?
I was thrilled that all that happens. I mean, you can only go in for the competition. I mean, if you don't enter, you won't win. That's all you can say. But amazingly, there was a very open system in those days, and you'd actually get these cassettes of people's demos of songs they wanted to represent the UK, actually going out to like 8 million people, and those people could vote. That was the system. Immediately after that, they changed it. Having got a winning song that way, they then immediately did the opposite.
Was it submitted for you guys to perform the song, or was you just submitting the song as like a songwriting thing and like, oh, maybe someone else will record it and do the competition, or how was it?
Yeah, I think right at the beginning of Eurovision, just the song would go forward. I think it was maybe like one singer would sing all the songs in the contest, or maybe one male and one female singer as appropriate. Really was like the song contest. I think it's where they got the name the song contest. Obviously, it's much more about the presentation and the performance, and the effects and everything there. But yeah, in those days, it was like the song and the artist. It's like Katrina The Waves singing Walking on Sunshine. The year before, it was like Gina G singing Ooh, Oh, just a little bit, and so on.
Did it change your perception of the whole contest?
Oh, I put my hand up and said, I didn't really think a lot about the Eurovision Song Contest before 1997. I knew there was Bucks Fizz with Making Your Mind Up. But I was very, like a lot of, relatively young musicians, I was like very tribal about music. I think, oh, well, that's for other people, Be happily sort of chugging away on the guitar. If somebody had said disco, I would have said, oh, I don't like disco. Because it's all jazz funk or something. I would say, well, I prefer jazz and I prefer funk, or fusion, that was another one. I mean, it's a mind-broadening experience, music. It bypasses a lot of the sort of cognitive part of the brain, it goes straight to the feelings, and it's quite abstract. I mean, it's possible to enjoy a song without understanding any of the words. Probably around Europe, I mean, a lot of these songs are in English, and most people that hear them actually don't understand what's being said. But you have got a chance to get directly to people's feelings. And that's the same whether you're sort of thrash metal or whether you're middle of the road.
That was when your dad realised you were doing the right thing then.
Probably, it was a proper job.
It finally made sense, yeah. With your career through the Soft Boys and Katrina and the Waves, you have still stayed consistently busy with solo records and working with your wife Lee here, which I believe you've released 11 albums since the year 2000. How is writing and performing for you today? Does it bring different rewards these days?
Fundamentally, it's the same feeling. If you get in a room, there's people there, you've got a chance to just give them a lift, just everybody in the room to get the same lift, make a difference. And that doesn't change at all. I'm very lucky that that's our job.
One of the great things about playing with Kimberley is that whenever you play with him, he's got a lot of energy when he plays, more than anyone else ever has that I've ever played with before. And it doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter whether it's in the studio, in rehearsal, on a big stage, on a small stage. You get 100% Kimberley Rew whenever he picks up that guitar. He kind of like kazoings off the stage. It's amazing.
Has it still got that same magic for you, Kimberley, when you pick up the guitar or get on a stage?
Yeah. I mean, it's still very nerve-wracking. You've got to sing something. I mean, I'm not really a singer or a frontman or a band leader. I'm not any of those things. But I can make something out of nothing with just the guitar, Lee and me together. But it's not easy, and it is a challenge every time.
That's why you get adrenaline from it. It is exciting. You're putting yourself on the line every time.
Thank you ever so much for chatting with me. I've loved meeting you both, and I appreciate all the great stories. It's been very, very cool.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, anytime. Anytime.
I'll make the best from the worst if I get to it first. You can't rely on me. Get down.
Thanks so much to Kimberley Rew and his wife Lee Caveberry for sharing some great stories right here on the Straight to Video podcast. If you're only familiar with the singles from Katrina and the Waves, do yourselves a favour and dig a little under the surface, as it's some great stuff, along with maybe checking out the Soft Boys too, and also stay up to date with upcoming Kim and Lee projects, all of which can be found at kimberleyrew.co.uk or over at kimandlee.co.uk. As we get close to 200 episodes of this podcast, make sure you don't miss a single episode by following wherever you listen to shows, or you can find them all along with straight-to-video music videos and merchandise at stvpod.com. Thanks to everyone that's picked up some merch. We have shirts, caps and mugs, along with some new items in the pipeline, but this, along with the great support of our Patreon page at patreon.com/stvpod, are all invaluable to keeping this show running and on schedule, so thank you so much. That is all for today's episode. Please check back every Tuesday and Friday for a new show, but until we chat again, take care and speak real soon.